Mitch Belisle, Ryan Boyle.
We're back.
We're back, baby.
Back in the office after a beautiful weekend. Just a beautiful weekend. Big red weekend. I know you were excited about PLL training camp, but I was closing out the books.
I had a great weekend upstate, which is anytime you just go north of the city, right? Regardless of how many hours it is, everything's just upstate.
Yeah.
So it was only a couple hours. Only a couple hours, but we'll consider it upstate. And we have a new sponsor, Northview Hotels and Resorts. Super excited about bringing them on as a sponsor.
Remind everyone where they are.
Yeah, they create authentic, unforgettable experiences at destinations across the United States. So they've got places in Bend, Oregon, down in Boca, kind of all over the country. So incredible hotel and resort operators. So we're super, super thankful for Northview Hotels and Resorts. Any sponsors, real or fictitious, feel free to comment and email us, and we'll consider it. We'll see if we can weave you in. But super happy about bringing them on board.
Let's talk PLL.
Before we talk PLL, I will give you your flowers. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I felt like yours kind of all season. Sometimes there's a year where it just feels like there's a team, it took you long enough.
Yeah, 48 years, no big deal, just a quick lifetime. Things are better. Those who wait, something about that, something. Anyway, Mike French was there at the tailgate, so that was pretty cool. So he had actually hoisted the trophy and now was able to be there and see that hoisted by CJ Kirst. And the passing of the torch was pretty cool.
Sounds
and
fun.
Years and years of alumni and
great.
One of the best tailgates I've ever been to. So I'll be missing that weekend for the rest of my life. Hopefully,
you
have a few more.
Probably haven't been to a lot of tailgates.
Not like that. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Let's talk about next big lacrosse weekend coming right up.
Coming up,
starting tomorrow.
Yes, opening weekend up in Albany. It's always something, a lot of energy. The team's coming off their training camp, a lot of hard decisions in terms of who makes their 25-man roster. Hard decisions there, and then getting from your 25 to your 19 kind of even harder. And a lot of times guys battling some injuries as well, some availabilities. So the first weekend in Atlas, it being their homecoming weekend, 2 games right off the bat. So it's a big weekend for them specifically. Whereas Water Dogs are off this weekend, so we won't get to see them and CJ Kirst in action. But you think of Atlas last year, right? 2-0 in the open weekend, and it just felt like they rode that momentum pretty much the entire regular season. So starting with them, they're going to kick things off on Friday against Carolina Chaos. A lot of turnover in terms of Chaos. You look at head coach and GM. New staff, head coach Roy Colsey, former teammate of mine, Spencer Ford, the GM there.
Former teammate of mine with the Riptide.
Yep, and I think when you look at them, you still got Blaze Reardon net, and you still got that stout defense in front of him. So nothing is they lost Will Bowen, but otherwise they still got Rowlett, they still got Newman, they still got Troy Ray, they brought in Jack Posey, they drafted Levi Verge. So I expect them to still be very, very stout defensively.
They just got to win games 4-3.
That's right.
3-2, 4-3 games. Yeah.
That's right. And then you look at Atlas. That was a whole year ago, but number 1 offense in the league. Jeff Teat wins MVP, and they were lights out offensively. You look at that attack unit: Teat, Xander Dixon, Connor Schellenberger. It just makes sense, right? In terms of those pieces of the puzzle fitting together. And the midfield, they added some firepower, drafting Matt Trainer. They've
just adding to their stable of 6'4", 220 midfield.
Right, and so you look at them, and there's just not a lot of holes. Right, and then that offense, and then you got Trevor Baptiste at the face-off, and just the whole field is going to shift. So I expect Atlas to have way more possessions, and just can they keep it close, honestly, and give themselves a puncher's chance, because I think the ball is just going to be on the Atlas side so frequently and such for long periods and long stretches. It's a classic strength on strength, Atlas O versus Carolina D. But the X factor is Trevor Baptiste,
and Hugh Kelleher, I think, is Atlas, right? He got drafted by the Atlas. So it'll be interesting to see how he fits in, or if he fits in. But back to those 6'4", 220 guys, right? Just right in the mold.
Got to bring up a Cornell guy,
Yeah,
of course. It's like great, cool. Why don't you talk about Teat, the Cornell
When
guy?
was the last Princeton National Championship? Yours?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Still got a little while.
Yeah. We've waited 24 long years.
We had double that, 48. So yeah.
We're ahead of schedule by Cornell standards. But I think the home crowd is going to get behind Atlas. I think obviously Troy Ray, being a Great Dane kind of alum, like maybe some of the crowd kind of leans towards Carolina. But I think it's going to be a great way to kind of kick off the season.
That crowd was amazing at the quarterfinals just a few weeks ago. So you got to hope they carry that momentum into bringing everyone back, keeping people engaged and excited about lacrosse in the Capital Region.
Let's shift gears to Game 2 of Night 1, Friday night. This is at 8:30, also on ESPN+. We've got the California Redwoods taking on the Denver Outlaws. Mm-hmm. And we talked about Carolina's turnover. Same story with Redwoods, right? New head coach and GM. Joe Spallina takes over as GM. Anthony Kelly takes over as head coach. Obviously, you have familiarity with A-Train.
Oh yeah, another Riptide guy. A lot of Riptide in the mix.
Yeah, they took a blowtorch to their roster. It is just a lot of new faces, specifically on offense. You look at them at offensively. Last year they really, really struggled. And I think from a draft perspective, you bring in McAdory, the dynamic guy in the midfield. I think they're going to use him a bunch of different ways. You draft Chris Kavanaugh, at attack. You basically insert him, right into the lineup. Those are two young pieces. Sam English, they also drafted him. We'll kind of see it based off his availability. But I just think you're gonna see a different Redwoods team offensively.
You're putting Ryder Garnsey with Kavanaugh. Like, how much shit is going to be talked on that attack line, by the way? But I saw them together. I was like, oh man, someone's going to get an earful every shift there. But no, that's an exciting, dynamic, unique. There's going to be a lot of oohs and ahs coming from the crowd when watching that offense, I think, for sure.
Big time. And then, the storyline, not to bury the lead, is we got brothers going against each other, right? You got Chris Kavanaugh for California going against his brother Pat Kavanaugh for Denver. And, they were featured on SportsCenter, which was super cool to see just from an exposure standpoint.
It's brother against brother. Pat and Chris Kavanaugh going head to head in the opener. I mean, are you guys excited about this?
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one. Yeah, super pumped. It's definitely going to be a little weird and uncomfortable, I think, maybe for the first few minutes watching him shoot up for another team. But, yeah, we're super excited. Yeah.
I do want to ask you, because your family obviously has to cheer for one team over the other. Mm-hmm. How is that going to work?
Yeah, I think Matt's going to be kind of in a twisty turn here. He started out in Denver as a rookie, had a couple seasons there, won 2 championships with them. And then obviously when the PLL got started, he played for the Redwoods. And then he played for the Cannons as well.
But then you kind of zoom out. Pat Kavanaugh got brought in this past offseason, by Denver via trade. You got Kavanaugh won the Tewaaraton last year. Year before Brennan O'Neill won the Tewaaraton before that. And then coming back, Logan Wisnauskas.
That's right.
So,
that's another big team, just big bodies on that group.
I mean, we talk about like the heyday of like all the talent sometimes in like the MLL. I don't think there has ever been a time where 3 back-to-back Tewaaraton winners were on the same lineup.
You'd have to probably go back to like Long Island Lizards days, maybe with like Doug Shanahan winning the original Tewaaraton.
That's what I'm saying, it didn't exist.
Yeah.
But even like Attackman of the Year, like I just can't think of a time.
And they kind of went through that rebuild when they made the transition from Chrome to Denver, right, or to the Outlaws, and you saw the success they started to string together towards the end of the year as like Brennan O'Neill figured it out, and they were shooting the lights out from their midfield. And
Grant Bundy Jr., exactly. Like he's back. He can bring it. I mean, all those little puppies, all those little, what's an outlaw junior? What's a junior? All those
junior bandits,
all those troublemakers. All those troublemakers are now
delinquents. They're delinquents now turning into bandits.
They're full outlaws. So you look at last year's rookie class, made such a big impact. Graham Bundy Jr., Dalton Young, I think was super underrated. Luke Weirman at the faceoff stripe rather. They've all got a year under their belt, so I think they're super young, super athletic offensively, and then defensively, you got JT Giles Harris, the technician. Mike Manley's still going strong. He's still going strong.
He's an inspiration.
And truly, and
also a mustache inspiration.
That's right.
He's got a solid cookie
and Jesse Bernhardt. So you got youth on one side, and then you've got
the OG Rattlers days to Chrome all the way to the through lines and back to the Outlaws.
I'm curious. They drafted McNaney out of Maryland, coming fresh off the national championship game. They were not great in goal last year, to say the least. How much of that was the play versus the defense in front? That's always kind of a debate. But do you just throw him right into the fire, right, coming off of a college season, or do you kind of give him a week to kind of get his feet wet? I'm curious to see how they manage that in terms of who's starting versus serving as the backup. But that to me, I think is going to be an exciting game, just given the novelty of Redwoods. And then Pat Cavanaugh, joining this attack unit, and then the Cavanaugh versus Cavanaugh kind of battle. So a lot of storylines, should be a lot of fun on Friday night. Next game, Mitchell, Saturday. This is the big one. 1 p.m. ABC. We've got a championship game rematch of the Whipsnakes and the Archers.
New look Whipsnakes. Got a little Rob Pennell action on there.
That's right.
Archers getting Sam King, Ivy League stud coming in. We'll see if he cracks the lineup with as star-studded as that one is.
No, he had a great camp. He had a great camp. Let's talk Whipsnakes though first. You brought it up. You get Rob Pennell, that's kind of the headline, right, of the offseason for them. I think what I'm curious to see is TJ Malone come back, rookie of the year. He's playing attack.
Yeah.
Right? And then from the other two spots, you got Pennell,
Rambo,
and Matt Brandow, who you traded for in the offseason. You traded Zed Williams for Matt Brandow in the offseason. One of them is running out of the box.
I feel like Brandow's the obvious pick, right?
But Water Dogs did that last year, and it wasn't really
have the seamless fit.
It wasn't. It just they didn't get enough juice out of him coming out of the midfield. But to your point, you're not really asking Pennell or Rambo to run out of the box. So
maybe Rambo, but I think Pennell has kind of got that X on lock. Rambo's got that low wing on lock.
So I think they're gonna I think they'll figure it out because there's just enough talent there, and they're all super smart players and high IQ and good passers. I wouldn't be surprised if they just do a 4-man attack rotation.
Just as soon as someone gets tired, they're going to be the hardest riding team in the league. Or as soon as someone gets tired, just sub them right in.
The bigger question mark is in the midfield. Tucker Dordebeck's not back from injury. Ryan Conrad's on the PUP list. You get Brad Smith coming back from injury, so he's a welcome boon to that unit.
That's from several years, right?
He missed all last year. He played in Champs Series this past.
That's right. That was his big debut back.
I love their youngsters, Anderson and Patra. I thought they were fantastic, especially down the stretch.
And Patra had a great indoor season, right?
They were huge in last year's playoffs, making huge big plays, and then they drafted Aiden Carroll, who I think that's the guy. What does he bring to them from the midfield position?
Yeah, and another guy, attackman, right?
Yeah, but they're gonna have. I think they're gonna have to run.
Someone's gonna have to try.
And his story is amazing in terms of Georgetown, battled injuries, was on the practice roster, the practice squad, right? The second unit, and kind of just kept grinding to become just a star in a first round draft pick. So hats off to him just in terms of his work ethic and great story. But offensively, they've got some question marks, I think, and more in terms of fit.
How are they going to get the ball to their attack?
How does the fit work?
Yeah.
Defensively, not a lot of questions, right? Same unit that started all last year. Tim Muller, Matt Dunn, they're not going anywhere. And then Ajax Zapatello last year was a pretty seamless fit. Colin Squires is an underrated LSM, I would say, and their rope unit, they're going to bring in Mazur from Army, so I think they'll be fine defensively. So I think weirdly, it's how do you fit the pieces together offensively? Archers are a train. They didn't lose anybody.
No, just adding to the arsenal. Yeah,
they lost depth. So the guys that they lost that left, a guy like Ogden, Van Overbeck. Like, they all filled in when there was injuries. But, like, you still have Connor Fields at attack. You still have Tom Schreiber and Grant Ament in midfield. You still got Hasek at D.
Dobson in net.
Sissel
solid.
Berger facing off. Like, you just look at it and you're just kind of like, well, where's their... no, they're really good there.
Yeah.
Oh, they're really good there. Oh, they're really good there.
There's a
Oh, they're
reason
really
they've
good
won
there.
a few championships.
Oh, they're really well coached. It's just like... So I think the thing that I'm most excited about seeing... You brought up Sam King. He had a great camp. So how does he fit into the offense? Very positionless. They think more kind of righties and lefties. How does he fit in?
He's a Harvard guy, they can think on a higher level than us.
And then defensively, they brought in Brendan Lavelle, which was not like a need per se. They have Hasek, as I mentioned, Mason Woodward, who was fantastic last year, especially down the stretch, and then Warren Jeffrey. So I think when you draft Lavelle, and they thought so highly of him that they were like, we're going to add strength on strength. I think we're going to see more Mason Woodward in between the lines.
In the pole, yeah.
And I think
He's great off the ground.
He's great off the ground. He's great off the ground. He's a threat from 2-point. I think you look at the champion.
Brody Merrill-esque ball hawk, kind of.
Yeah, he's just super dynamic. He's super athletic. I thought the play of the championship last year was the cause turnover and then the run.
Produced it to himself, and
then he nails it too. So, like, is that just the norm now, right? Because you think of Archers very much like 6-on-6, and I think if they can add that element to their overall portfolio, if you will, like, it's pretty dangerous. That's going to be just an incredible game. Again, 1 p.m. on ABC.
And then wrapping up the evening, Cannons and Atlas back at it, and the Cannons who have had some success in the small field, they get to bring that back to the full field 10v10 game.
Yeah, you look at them, and offensively, very, very strong. It's always been like, who's playing that left side, that left attack spot where they haven't got
literally zero lefties last year.
They just bounced around a lot of different guys. So with Matt Cavanaugh, retiring, they brought Will Manny to camp, and then they drafted Coulter Mackesy at a Princeton. So I think they've completely solidified that position. So I'm interested to see how those guys work within the framework of the existing offense.
Have you heard anything from camp?
I'm not sharing anything right now in terms of this.
Right,
I'm not sure what's public.
Post-game,
I'm not sure what's public and what's not. So the guy I'm most excited to see is Owen Grant.
Yeah, and that was, what was it? Coach Holman said he's like, I wanted that guy from the moment I knew he was potentially going to play in the outdoor league.
And he traded. They had the 3rd and 4th pick overall in the draft this past year, and they traded the 3rd pick to get Grant. And so when you talk to Coach Holman about the draft, he's like, and we traded the 3rd pick for Owen Grant. So he like almost considers Owen Grant like a part of the draft class, if that makes sense. But I thought he was an absolute animal coming out of Delaware. We've seen what he's done in the indoor game.
The first time I saw him live, I was at the home opener for the Mammoth versus Vancouver. He had 3 goals, 10 caused turnovers, and was just manhandling people on defense. I'm like, God, this guy is just everywhere.
Yeah.
Just a unit.
Yeah. I mean, it's the only time I've ever seen John Grant Jr. look small on the lacrosse field. Went to training camp a couple years ago and was like, who's Junior's dad? Who's Junior's uncle? It's like, that's Owen Grant. It's like, holy, but just an absolute beast. So I think I'm super excited about watching him. And then, for Atlas, is the turnaround, right? And if you win, can you keep that momentum going?
2-0 they started with last year, just
can you keep that going as opposed to we got the 1, and then if you lose, you better get over whatever discrepancies, whatever errors, whatever.
You don't have a whole lot of time to figure it out. Right?
No, you've got to turn the page immediately. So any sort of confidence you might have lost, you got to have a short memory because you do not want to go 0-2 on these weekends. So I think it's a bigger mental and physical hurdle for them from game 1 to game 2. That is a quick turnaround, as you know, from playing back-to-backs.
Yeah. All right, let's bring it all home. When, where, how are people tuning in?
Friday.
To hear you.
What's up?
To hear you.
Yeah.
All 4 games. Let's go.
Yeah. Friday night, 6 and 8:30 p.m. on ESPN Plus. Saturday afternoon, 1 p.m. on ABC.
Big boy.
And then 7 p.m. back on the Plus. So tune in. Obviously, all the games will be on ESPN Plus, but that 1 p.m. on ABC championship rematch. I think that's kind of the plant the flag in the ground, kind of the big game from the weekend. But should be super exciting. Kind of up in Albany, always a great crowd, always an incredible atmosphere, and always great games to kind of kick off the season.
Well, good luck out there. Crush it in weekend 1, and look forward to hearing all about it.